They really liked my band back then.
What was that?
That was one of the first outside of the United States places to really get into my music, like my band and stuff. It was the underground scene in places like London and Dublin and probably well, like Berlin and Paris, I think too.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
mean, they started that. They started
mm,
kind of the hippie movement before it made it to the U.S. as well. I
yeah,
mean, they were always. I would think they were pretty groundbreaking when it comes to like psychedelic rock, or when it comes to I don't know, any kind of deeper trance type music.
mm, yeah. I mean, the stuff that I was making was back then. It was very punk rock oriented, post punk oriented, but um, after a point, that kind of meshed in with like the rave scene, which is really weird. So it kind of, myself included, a lot of the musicians that came from sort of the punk, post punk world and approach to music um, ended up being heavily influenced by electronica and sort of ended up creating electronic music as well. And out of that came this sort of hybrid form of music, which was a weird bastardization of rave music and punk music blended together, which I think is what Young Astronauts Club is at this point.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it definitely has taken off from that, and it was interesting because I think I was watching a documentary about the Doors recently, and they were
Mm,
talking about how there's this audio tape of Jim Morrison talking about like what the future of music would be, and
mm,
he's talking about when basically he was talking about DJing before it was a thing. He was talking about people being able to play multiple tapes, and that being the music that
mm.
people would listen to was the compilation of all the tapes that people would play in synchronicity to each other. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's basically what DJing is at this point, like queuing up certain tracks and sounds to make a beat.
Yeah. Yeah. He was definitely able to see what was coming and he hit the nail on the head. I've seen that video as well. And I think he was obviously also referring to the early hip hop pioneers and stuff. That kind of, that you you had a DJ with a couple of turntables and maybe a
Yeah,
drum machine as well, and that was the band.
yeah,
So
because
that was kind of cool.
that's what he was describing was like a drum
Mm-hmm.
machine almost.
Mm-hmm.
He just didn't have he just couldn't explain the electrical side, the electrical component of it yet because it hadn't
Yeah,
really been thought of. And I was like, oh, that idea just carried on to be something pretty big.
yeah. Jim Morrison, visionary and prophet.
Yeah, I would say so in some ways. I think in other ways not so much, but there's the balance to it. I mean, what I can't remember the term, but like an idiot savant, or I don't remember what the actual term is, but you can be very elegant about some things and nail it on the head, and then because you're so elegant on other things, it gets in your way, and you almost become arrogant from it and think you're getting everything right too.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't work that way. Yeah, I'm sure that I've looked back on things that I've said and gone, "Ooh, yeah." I hope so. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like all of us navigate through that in life. We definitely change our mind about things and evolve our views, but some people get stuck in the mud about it, like they don't want to
Yeah.
change their mind. But I don't know. I don't know anybody that doesn't grow a little bit throughout their lives and their thoughts that they had when they were younger.
Yeah. I don't even remember being a kid at this point. I'm so old. Like I'm nearly 50, so it's kind of like everything that I thought when I was 10 or 20 or even when I was pushing 30, it's like, damn, I was stupid with a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Um, you just end up seeing reality at a point, and you can't really go back from it. I think at least you should. People should.
Yeah, definitely should.
Mhm.
So, the topic on a table tonight that we're probably going to have to dive into quite a bit. There's an upcoming
Topic.
election coming up,
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
and you've heard about that,
Mhm.
huh? What's So I've seen the recent video, and we've been talking about this a little offline. And I wanted you to kind of explain it to people who haven't seen the video. What about Donald Trump serving a second term, and kind of getting this message across to people, because from somebody that studies law, it's good to have your input on it as well.
Yeah. Well, I hope so, but you know, it- coming from me, it's often dismissed to begin with because I just have that kind of personality anyway. I'm not really like, you know, belligerently assertive about anything. I'm kind of just like, this is what I think, and you guys can make what you want of it. But um, yeah, uh, I studied law and I have a law degree. I'm not, I haven't taken the bar exam anywhere, but I could easily pass. I think wherever I chose to take it. But there's a clause in the Constitution that specifically states no person shall be elected to more than two terms. It's pretty clear, pretty um, easy to figure out. Google that one. I'm not sure exactly where it is, honestly, but it is in there. Um,
But yeah, it's been, because we used to have presidents that ran through terms. We've updated it since then, and now we have a term limit added to our presidents.
yeah,
But we
that,
didn't prior we didn't priorly have that in the Constitution originally.
yeah,
So it is a redaction, or what would you call it? An amendment they added.
an amendment. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was put in after Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was
yeah.
elected 4 times, and he died in office. Um, and his vice president, Harry Truman, took over. But in order to prevent that from happening and keep happening, there was an amendment put in. I forget what number it is. You'll have to look it up, anyone out there. But it says, no person shall serve or shall be elected more than twice. So the thing is, Donald Trump may have already been elected twice. It, it's I can We can elaborate on that if you want to, but it's
Yeah, because I don't think a lot of people. There's two fractions of people. That some people think that there is a puppet in the White House that is supposed to please, I don't know, the public feelings towards the whole thing, and that there might be an actual president that's still serving a term, that was placed in power.
yeah,
And I don't know, like, I've heard this ideology from people, but I don't know how it could ever be proven. Like, unless there's like bills coming across the table with his name and stuff like that. Like, I don't know how
yeah,
somebody would prove that he did get that second term.
yeah, and it has become increasingly difficult to determine whether or not somebody is elected, is not elected yet appointed to be president, and there's a lot of it's just getting more and more out of hand with actually knowing what's going on,
Yeah.
and therefore the electoral college, in my viewpoint, would likely not appoint Donald Trump again because he may have already been elected twice. I mean, it's not even known if he was really elected in the first in 2016, right? It was like Hillary might have been elected, but Trump was appointed. But does that count as an election anyway? You know what I mean? It's sort of like there's a lot of vagueness surrounding
Oh yeah.
the qualification when it comes to that.
Well, and there's
So,
also the gray area of does it count as a full term if a president was impeached during their term, and does it nullify their term, or what impact does that have on an actual you know
yeah,
term served?
yeah, there's a lot of question as to what's what the situation is, what could have happened or what might have happened. And so my thinking, therefore, is that the Electoral College, as they generally do, tend to go with what's the cautious approach to interpretation of the rules, which they've done all along. Um, they might not appoint Trump if he were nominated by the Republican Party, just simply because of that rule of nobody may be elected more than twice. And so I think if the Republican Party wants to have the presidency in 2024, there's going to have to be someone else nominated. And I mean, I'm still here. I don't
Yeah.
think I don't think the Democratic Party would have anything to do with me, frankly, because of the direction that they've gone in, and my, you know, I mean, I might have been a Democrat at one point if they hadn't gone in this new direction. You know, I mean, I grew up in a blue state. I liked Bill Clinton. Um, I, you know, I'm sure that there have been good Democrat presidents in the past. I'm trying to think of some, but
I mean, Kennedy usually gets put in a good light.
yeah,
I mean, for the most part, at least being against some government corruption. He had his
yeah.
own flaws as well, but I'd say he definitely kiboshed some false flags that might have costed him his life.
Harry
And
Truman was pretty good.
yeah, Truman.
That was one of the greats, I think.
I was hearing somebody try to make the argument to me that Nixon was one of the best presidents of all time, and I said, "Really?" I said, "I can't fathom it, to be honest."
Yeah, I think he was honestly as well.
You think he
Speaking
was?
fairly objectively speaking, I think he was a great president, and he had no personality. He was dull as dull as it gets. You know, he didn't look good on television compared to Kennedy during the Kennedy Nixon debates. That's why Kennedy won, I think. Um,
I think it was his views and the tapes that got released about what he thought of hippies, and I think he got himself in quite a bit of trouble. I think the debate I was making was because the person was a fan of Donald Trump, but they were also a fan of Nixon, and I said, well, if you want to talk about real charges to put against a person, I said Nixon probably committed more crimes than Donald Trump will ever commit in his whole life.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think Nixon made someone like Bush, for instance, or the other Bush, look like I mean, he was like a choir boy by comparison. You know?
Well, and Nixon wasn't a mouthpiece in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Nixon was making his own choices about things.
Mm-hmm.
The Bushes were following orders. It seemed like there wasn't a lot of decision making going on, at least between George W. Bush. His dad might have been making decisions, honestly, in his life and also in his presidency. I could see that, but I couldn't see it as George W. Bush was in charge of all that much. Like it just seemed like he
Yeah,
was just kind of toted around, very Biden-esque.
yeah, probably. Um, yeah, Nixon was really ahead in abolishing the gold standard, for instance. I think that was really thinking ahead of things because, I mean, that's really what has led us to the point we are now, which is we're sort of at the point of, I think, abolishing fiat currency, which he kind of promoted instead of the usage of the gold standard. So we're going like one step ahead of what Nixon initiated back in 1973.
I think pulling us
1973.
ourselves off of the gold standard was probably one of the worst things our country had ever done when it came to valuing the money that we actually carry around.
Some would argue that, um, but it's
It,
also
the only
less.
argument I would make with that is it gives us the ability to print money without it being backed by something, and I don't think that was
Right.
ever on the table prior to that.
No, but here's the genius about that people don't understand is that it lessened foreign influence in our country, which is a really great thing. Um, when you have foreign powers controlling vast amounts of the gold, then our country is, if we use the gold standard, would be beholden to those foreign powers, some of which are monarchies. I mean, seriously, it's kind of like we don't really need that influence. Um, and fiat currency is by no means a perfect replacement for the gold standard either. I think fiat currency has proven to be as, unfortunately, as good of an avenue for corruption as, maybe not quite as much as the gold standard, but it's significant enough that it's an avenue for corruption and abuse of, for instance, politicians, political offices. Think of all the compromise that has taken place since the acceptance of fiat money as the mainstream form of currency. It's quite significant. This is part of the reason I think why Bitcoin is going to blow up so big. Inevitably, it's really inevitable. I think they've been trying to stop it, but I do think it's inevitable. It's going to hit six figures before very long. I think for a single Bitcoin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was talking. Well, 'cause it falls along the line with the same people that think um, Donald Trump might have served more than one term.
Hmm.
They're talking about there being a new currency that's going to be introduced to the American public, at least, and they're talking about the fact that your money will become worthless.
Hmm.
Um, and it's almost like if you knew about Bitcoin or if you knew about a cryptocurrency that was doing well, now or 10 years ago would have been the time to invest in it because as soon as they switch over, then they're going to be somewhat of a electronic currency. I think they want everything done on a electronic level where they can control your finances a little bit better and monitor what you're buying, and say you don't necessarily fall into the political lines that they want you to. All of a sudden, your money doesn't work, and
Yeah. Central
maybe you
bank
bought too
digital.
much beef. Yeah, maybe you bought too much beef this week, and they said, okay, no, you can't buy any more beef this week,
Hmm.
or whatever. We want you eating bugs and owning nothing and being
Yeah.
happy.
Well, that's obviously something we don't want as a situation ever, which is why Bitcoin is an adequate replacement, if in fact a great replacement for fiat money, because it doesn't facilitate any of that. It's decentralized. It can't be controlled. Um, it's person to person. It's it can be anonymous. I mean, you don't have to put your name on. You don't have to tie your identity or name to Bitcoin at all.
Yeah.
Um, so it does seem to me like that is going to replace fiat currency, not just in the United States but worldwide. And in fact, there's see there's a couple of really big countries that are actually seriously talking about adopting it. Russia, for instance, which
Yeah. I mean, some countries have already, right?
yeah, El Salvador is
Yeah.
the first. China actually is considering adopting as well, like just making it a legal tender inside the country. Which, I mean, if two countries that big are seriously considering adopting Bitcoin as a currency, just think the effect that would have, that will have really on the whole world. Um, it's just mind blowing. I think Bitcoin could easily be worth $1 million if that becomes a reality. When that becomes a reality, it's just a matter of when. It kind of probably should have happened already, but like we know what's happened, they've tried to kill it, and they've been trying really hard to stop it, but it hasn't succeeded, and I don't think it will.
Well, yeah, even China to their own people kind of made cryptocurrency almost abolished in the area, while at the same time they were buying up Bitcoin for themselves
Yeah,
and trying to corner the market a little bit.
yeah, probably. I don't think that really discouraged Chinese people from getting Bitcoin either. I mean, if you look, you'll find out that there have been illegal mining operations all throughout China all along, and people are still mining it. They're still buying it. No matter what your government says or tries to tell you what to do about it, there's nothing they can really do to stop it. So that's another thing. It's uncontrollable.
Well,
So
since you're talking about mining, I was recently learning more about quantum computing. What do you think the effects to adding quantum computing to the mining process could do for people that were mining?
I don't know. I'm not that knowledgeable on the technology, actually, on the technology end of it. Um, I'm sure that there will be vast improvements in the mining field coming. I mean, one of the newest mining rigs that's coming out in August. Um, at the moment, it mines about $1 million worth of cryptocurrency a year for a single machine.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it's like just it could fit on your desktop, like a desktop computer or something, and you just run it the whole year. You'd make over $1 million probably if it continues to work at the rate that it works right now. It could actually do better. It could actually do worse. But I mean, the rig itself is like $40,000 to buy. So overall, that's not a bad investment either.
Oh, what was that great? Kim had a statement, I guess, that he wanted to ask you about. Um, he said, "I hear you will have a debate against Mike Pence next month, Mr. Macintosh."
Oh, okay. Well, that's news to me. So I'm getting my news from you now. So I don't know, Zachary. I don't know anything about that.
Bringing it back to the presidency thing, what we were talking offline about how we think recently, at least noticeably, we were talking about George Bush versus Al Gore is kind of like the big the big one in the public eye where we saw deception going on when it comes to elections, and
Mm.
where the public favorite didn't win the election. Um,
Yeah.
what I wanted to ask you as like a caveat to that was, do you think the CIA is picking these people that they actually plan on being in higher powers, or is it a certain member of or a certain group of government that is venting these people prior to them becoming elected?
Mm. I'm really not sure, honestly, what goes on in that regard. But the Electoral College has always decided who the president was going to be from the start, from very early on. Um, it just seems like lately they either have more information than the general public that they've based their appointments off of, or some other reason to make someone the president who isn't isn't getting the majority of the popular vote. They've done that a few times, but I don't really know like what's actually going on there. I really don't. I do think that, I mean, yeah, probably the CIA has access to information, has had access to information that these decisions are then being made off of. But I don't have any concrete evidence of that. I don't know any names or anything like that.
I just didn't know if you had heard, because a lot of people in this field, when it comes to talking about future presidents and stuff like
Mm,
that, uh, claim to talk about sometime in their past being told that they were possibly going to be a future president. And I just wonder
yeah,
how that information eventually gets to people prior to them even thinking about presidency, possibly. Like kind of like your situation where you kind of knew you were going to be a future president or had the potential to be.
yeah, mm, that's true. And I'm still at the point where I don't really believe that, frankly. So it's kind of like, well, I'll see if that's true. If it happens, that's where I'm at. But like, it might not happen to in like it's from my point of view right now. I still think it would be crazy to make someone like me into the president of the United States. So um, I still think it would be very surprising if it happened, and I don't even know if I would want it to happen. Still, it's it's difficult to explain. I think in my case, it's more like nobody ever really came out and told me anything specific. So therefore, there's an element of respect for my own personal free will. But I still think that if I'm going to end up in that position, it's not because I wanted to in the first place. It's because I was put there for some reason.
Well, and that's what you've always told me was you didn't necessarily want to serve, but if the public brought you to that position, you'd be happy to take over the job. And
Yeah, well, I'll do a good job. I mean, you know, everybody needs a job. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So
that's true.
it's not like my dream job or anything like that. It really isn't. But I I do a great job at it just because I understand how such a position can be used to make great things happen, and I see the wasted opportunity. You know, an avid student of history, and I see the wasted opportunity that a lot of people have uh, wasted when they got into that position. And I just think that if there was a different mindset going in and a different kind of attitude, and someone looking to use that position to make different kinds of things happen, it would be much better. But have never had that person yet. And so I started thinking about it. I'm like, wait, could that be me? Could I actually do something like that? I'm like, well, yeah, I guess I could. That's really what was the impetus for starting to really figure out. Well, one of them, starting to figure out a lot of this other stuff, was just realizing that I could actually do something with that. And then it all came in like a snow, like an avalanche. Really, all these different memories and stuff came to me after I really started to figure out that I could actually do that. And I think you might have to kind of get to that point, um, to really realize like what kind of situation you're actually fully in. I mean, we're not in a situation where our personal free will is really is really respected. Like we don't have ultimate free will in this world. It's just not a thing. Like you can decide whether to do this, that, or the other, but ultimately you're still limited to doing only a certain, making a certain number of choices. Um, and
I think the public's done that in a lot of different ways, giving up certain freedoms for the idea of safety,
mm,
or the I don't know what it is, the idea of being protected,
mm,
whether it's the government protecting you from yourself or whatever. But yeah, I do think we've almost handed away our free will in a lot of senses.
yeah. And a lot of people don't really realize their choices, their options as well. That's another thing. Um, so if you don't realize your options, like how are you going to kind of make make good choices if you don't really realize what your options are? You just and people are just deciding what they're being told to decide. It's like you don't really have freedom to choose or free will when you're being told that you have to choose something or suffer consequences. You know,
Yeah.
it
Well, I
doesn't.
think that brings it back to what we were talking about with the presidential debates, and usually we get a Democrat and a Republican that they give you the idea that you're choosing who the candidate is, but if the Electoral College is actually making the decision, then you just have the illusion that you're actually making the decision, and the popular vote doesn't seem to matter. Then what what actual choices are you making, or has the choice already been made? You know.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that the Electoral College does still take into consideration what people actually vote for, but it's probably going with additional information that isn't available to the general public for whatever reason. Like, think about the average American doesn't have the opportunity to learn about geopolitics. Like
True.
what if we put this person in office? How is that going to affect the United States' relationship with Britain or the European Union or Russia or China or whoever? Um, we just don't have time to really think about that and learn about it. And so we might think that candidate X is going to be a great president, and so we vote for that person. But then the electoral college might say, "Well, wait a minute, this person is not really going to do well with this really important subject that wasn't given any consideration during the election or during the campaign or anything. Um, it wasn't addressed by the media. Um, this could cause World War III." Do you think if the Electoral College has that information, do you really think they're going to appoint candidate X, or are they going to appoint someone else who's not maybe the most popular candidate, but wouldn't do the bad thing that candidate X will do. I would think they'd appoint the other candidate.
I also think it's the best way to protect free will and freedoms and stuff like that is to give people the ability to make a wrong decision as well. That
Mhm.
way, they understand that thought needs to be put into this process. I think if elective officials are going over the public's head to make a decision for them without explaining why or trying to deceive them and make it seem like their vote was counted and stuff like that, I think that's more deceptive and more problematic over the long haul than it is to just because that's what I was talking about with from basically Al Gore on was basically when the public didn't really have the same respect for the elections and stuff like that. Like prior to the last election, you used to be able to openly say, "Hey, I think it was a rigged election," or "I think it was this," and then all of a sudden they realized the public really actually had an outcry on that, and they were like, "All right, now on the internet, we got to kibosh anybody saying anything about bad elections or anything like that." And then now recently, YouTube and a couple other streaming platforms have opened up the idea that you can now um, question election results again and not be penalized for it. Your channel won't get taken down or something like that. And I said, oh, how convenient coming into the next election. It's almost like they have forethought of what's going to happen again.
Yeah, I do think there is sort of excessive control over what people are expressing anywhere. It's just like it seems silly to try to micromanage people for expressing themselves online and this kind of thing. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they're doing that, other than maybe they're trying to police, uh, sort of prevent people from getting riled up. This kind of thing, people being incited. Um, I'm not sure that there are any legal, that they have any legal footing when it comes to that kind of stuff, and policing that kind of stuff. It's like, I suppose them being, that companies being private companies gives them some right to do that. But if it were a public utility, for instance, then they don't have the right to do that. I
I
suppose.
mean, it's as private as it wants to be, and
Mhm.
how it treats itself. If they're getting
Yeah.
information from the FBI and they're told to make decisions a certain way based on U.S. policy or by governing bodies of the U.S., I feel like they should have to adhere to some of the same things. And if we're talking about getting rid of fiat currency and maybe having a government currency, I could easily see them being like, "Oh, okay, they said something bad online. No, it doesn't affect you right now. In our current
Mhm.
situation, you might get kicked off their platform or something like that, but it doesn't have any effect outside of that." But
Yeah.
if our money was involved in it, I think that would be a little, little harder to navigate if they were able to freeze your assets as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It is all getting very scary and kind of, you know, Orwellian. And I'm not a huge fan of anything that encroaches upon civil liberties personally. Like, I think we should always try to stay away from any kind of thing that would encroach upon civil liberties. But I come from a very libertarian part of the country. I mean, I grew up down the street from New Hampshire, you know what I mean? So it's like, um, but yeah, libertarianism is kind of a foreign ideology to a lot of people still, especially people that have come from, maybe they're just first or second generation Americans, and they don't have exposure to this kind of thinking, or wherever they grew up. It's, you don't meet many libertarians.
No.
They just don't like. So, and not everybody gets a chance to uh, spend years growing up in New England. So it's kind of, it is a foreign ideology to a lot of people in the United
I
States.
think
And
that I think it is foreign, but at the same time, I do think the majority of population actually falls under that classification. As much as they want the public to think you're either left or you're either right, and they want that divide, I really do think more people fall in that centrist ideology of uh, just the idea that it's not the government's job to protect you against yourself, and as long as you're not harming others, um, like they should pretty much leave you alone. You should be able to do what you want in the in your own home as long as you're not harming anybody else. And most people do want a police force and stuff like that. I'm not saying they want no government, but most libertarians at least want the fire department, the local police, some of the normal levels of control. But I think the majority of the population would fall there. But yeah, you're right. They don't understand it anymore. They don't even know what
yeah,
libertarian is. I think libertarian and liberal are interchanged nowadays, and those
yeah,
are two very different terms.
yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely more of a conservative libertarian, if there is
Yeah.
such a thing. But that's where I kind of come from.
Well, yeah. Modern day ideology tells you that that's an oxymoron.
Yeah,
Um,
but it really
and
is.
but I would follow the same way. I would follow the same way as you do. I would consider
Mhm.
myself a conservative libertarian because I
Yeah,
want less government and I want more free will to the people.
yeah. And I mean, I suppose for a lot of people, it is an oxymoron because they're not coming from, you know, a lot of Americans, for lack of a better word, are not coming from an American background. So they're still being introduced to facets of American culture, which libertarianism is very uniquely American, actually, when you really think about it. Um, I mean, it came from it's it stemmed from the Enlightenment in England, which was brought over to the United States, where it's kind of had more of an opportunity to flourish, but is still obviously struggling. Um, I hate to blame immigration for anything, but when you have large amounts of immigrant populations, and then their descendants and their descendants and everything else, it's just some of the original ideas that were prevalent in the country get lost along the way or get muddied. Um, I think perhaps when we have that kind of situation, there should be at least some encouragement there then to help people who come from more recently American backgrounds to really learn more about the country that they are from and the history of it.
And I think liberals and Democrats in general have kind of stole it in a bit of a ruse. Um, they use compassion to others as the argument for giving away these liberties, or giving them to people that aren't U.S. citizens and worrying about
Mm.
people um, outside of the country before they worry about the country itself. I don't necessarily think it's. I'm not saying anybody shouldn't be allowed into this country. I think that's what makes this country great is the idea that we are a melting pot of people from all over. But there's nothing harmful about having a healthy ideology of what we want out of our own country.
I
And
agree.
the idea of being like, oh, we're if this party is in office, they're going to open the borders and let everybody in. Okay, well that would guarantee all those people that walked in would vote for you. You would assume. I mean, it's almost like I said, it's almost corruption on that level when
Yeah.
they would get more freedoms just for voting for a certain party or ideology that would help suit their life.
Yeah. There's definitely, I mean, that's been going on forever at this point. The corruption with favoring different potential voters. I mean, there's a joke that goes around where, well, immigrants are potential future Democrats.
Yeah.
That's why they're allowed in a lot of the time.
Well, and you see it more and more in your face nowadays when some people are like, "Hey, we really need to work on the United States," and some people are like, we don't want any borders at all."
Mm.
Which I'm not saying that I'm against that or anything like that. All I'm saying is we need to worry about what's going on at home before we start sticking our noses in other things. And anybody that comes into the country, I think they should want to help build the country up
Mhm.
and do whatever they can to make a better country, and so that other immigrants can come in from other countries. I think everybody should be, you know, wanting the best future for everybody here.
I
And
agree.
if,
Yeah, I
if
just
people are doing it the wrong way, it just looks so corrupt on weird spots.
yeah, I've talked about that on my website. There's a point on my platform where I've talked about immigration, and I know it's a very sensitive and controversial subject with a lot
Yeah,
of people, but I, I would, you know, I pointed out that I do think it is necessary to perhaps halt immigration for like just for a few minutes, maybe, um, because we need to get the country working properly for the people that are already in it. Um, and it isn't really doing that right now if you actually look at it. I don't want to get too negative because, you know, the United States has, as far as I'm concerned, unlimited potential. Um, so I'm not going to start talking too much garbage like some recent presidential candidates were. Um,
but I think it's got its yin and yang to it.
mm,
When we're talking about immigration, people don't put going to war in that same light, and I really think that's very similar when you're talking about the way that the U.S. goes to war and puts
mm,
its nose in other people's business or sends money to other countries rather than supporting people. Like, yeah, we were talking about George Bush. We could bring it back to him trying to bring Christianity into the Middle East. We could talk about how much money we're sending to the Ukraine for a war that we're not really involved with. Like, I think this is the
mhm.
same idea of we should be worried about the people at home and the things that are affecting this country before we worry about others. And I think it's the same thing as talking about immigration. I don't think they're too far astray from each other.
Yeah. Well, I think as long as we have one homeless person in the United States, we probably shouldn't be letting people into the country, period, because you know, it's just it's not really helping the problem.
Yeah, we're risking exacerbating that same
Mhm.
situation and having more homeless and more poverty. Or yeah, if things aren't fixed, I don't understand why we want to pull anybody else into that.
Yeah. Well, and it just it gives us an opportunity to fix the problem we already have, rather than really ignoring the problem. And that's ultimately what happens when you take on too many things all at the same time. You ignore inevitably an actual problem that needs to be addressed. And it just seems to me like when we have people living in 10 cities in Seattle or Los Angeles or wherever, then they really, we should focus on fixing that rather than.
I wonder if it's the U.S. government's way of saying, "Hey, we don't know how to fix this, but let's go address this problem over here.
Yeah,
We can try to fix this, and we can see that in our grasp, but we can't even figure out how to build roads properly in the United States, much less or obtain them, much less solve the problems of everyday citizens."
yeah,
And we find our money going across the seas or to other countries to help their issues rather than our own. I just think it's absolutely insane. I think it's it's not overreaching as much as it's avoiding things that
mhm,
have been on the table for quite some time. Like
yeah,
the problems in the U.S. and with our political systems, our judicial systems, and a lot of these things that need to be fixed. If I hear one more generation tell me about the mental health crisis, I'm like, oh, okay. So what's being
yeah,
done about it, by the way? And everybody's like, no, no, we're just going to address it. Like we
yeah,
just gotta talk about it more, and that'll make it more relevant. I'm like, well, so what's anybody doing to solve the problem, or are we just talking
yeah.
about it?
Well, I've talked about that on my platform also, which is bringing back mental health care because I remember when I was a kid in the '80s, in the '90s. Um, friends of mine would make use of the better mental health facilities that we had back then, which were over time done away with. Um, I never really had an issue, thankfully, for some reason. I guess I had music to keep me from going crazy, but
I mean, up until what the last 20 to 30 years, I don't think we've handled mental health very well.
no,
Um, like
not at all.
look at, I mean, the whole idea of what is it? Is it a lobotomy? When they used to do those horrible practices inside mental health facilities and try to
Mm,
act like it was a medical procedure that was helping people, where they like
mm,
drove a needle like into their eye and just horrible atrocities that they used to commit
yeah,
in mental health facilities. It was just a place to
mhm,
lock people up, and then they closed all
yeah,
those down, and our homeless population changed, and now we
mhm,
just have people like that roaming the streets rather than actually being treated in any way. And then we wonder why
yeah,
crime would go up or why mental health is such an issue now. Like
mhm,
we've just constantly just thrown money at it and then swept it under the rug until it became an issue that everybody had to address.
yeah. Well, I think we could certainly bring certain things back and do without other aspects of what had happened in the mental health care facilities. I think overall it would be a modest investment, frankly. Like, think about, for instance, the amount of gun violence that has happened because they're losing it. You know what I mean? Like, they're losing. People have lost their minds and they go out and do this kind of stuff. And it didn't used to be that way. Like, it just didn't. We had gun club in my high school. I,
That's the thing, though. I don't think people that legally register their guns and buy them legally and stuff like that are the issue when it comes to gun violence. Most NRA members are not out committing gun violence.
no, not at all.
I mean,
They're getting education.
mental health is a huge factor in it, but um, blaming specifically just blaming it on guns, I don't think is a solution to the problem, or just
Yeah,
blaming it on one thing. I think there's a lot of variables added into that whole situation where it's just like, okay, so you're going to take away the rights for people to defend themselves rather than teaching people how to actually be educated and use a gun properly. And I don't know.
yeah,
I think there's that's another one of those slippery slopes that no president has really addressed right.
Yeah.
Because I don't even
Mhm.
think the Second Amendment still has the same power these days. Like, what arms could you bear that would protect you against a tyrannous government? Our government's firepower is way more advanced than ours. If they considered an area treasonous, they could wipe you out with a drone strike rather than going to your house and having a firefight with you. That doesn't make any sense to them. I mean, the average human couldn't even go out and buy a cannon or a rocket launcher because and those are what 60 years from being the quality of arms that our military probably has now
Mm.
or more.
Yeah, and a lot of people will say that, so they'll try to discourage kind of active resistance to tyranny, really, that way. But um, we do have the power to actually resist tyrannical government, but they don't really want you to know that if they're
In,
tyrannical. They want you to
in
think that
what
you're
in what
resilient.
sense? How could we fight against our own government?
Well, the good thing is this that the American people, not necessarily the United States government all the time, but the American people have a lot of friends around the world, like we just do. And you're talking about countries and governments that have massive firepower. Um, and if this is the weird thing, if the United States government were actively working against the American people and we needed help from a foreign power, we would get it. So,
I don't know. I think it depends. I mean, do the people really have a say so if we bring it back to something talking about like an election when the electoral college is really making the decision, we just have the illusion of our vote mattering? Or
yeah,
do I mean, well, we know our military is leaps and bounds in size compared to any other country on this planet. And that's mainly the reason that the US is allowed to have the debt it has, because who's going to come and take the money from the US and get it back? I
yeah,
think our
sure, but
military is our backbone.
yeah, of course, but I mean, how many nuclear weapons do you need? Do you need 10 or do you need 100 or 1,000? It's like it's all going to do the same amount of damage
Yeah.
after.
Oh, and I've made this argument on the channel before. I said when it comes to nuclear, we're all ankle deep in gasoline and we're flicking matches at each other.
Yeah,
Everybody's got enough nuclear around the world to annihilate the whole world. We already know
yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, I don't get too deep, but I because I do understand a lot about this stuff. I've studied it quite extensively, and I'm quite aware of geopolitics. But there, I mean, Canada to the north, for instance, is a British Commonwealth country, right?
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of connection between the American people, Canada, Britain, Australia, other British Commonwealth countries. If somehow the United States government were actively working against the American people, there's leverage there that could be used against the United States government. You see what I'm saying?
I could also see the British government saying yes, we'd be happy to help you if you bow to the king, like everybody else has to.
Uh,
Put him on your money, and then we'll talk about it.
well, they're not really as much like that as you think. That's more like a 1700s kind of. That's a throwback to older times, but it's quite different now. I mean, I've
I
been to.
mean, as an Irish person, I think you would be able to address this better than there's a reason that Ireland isn't ruled by the British government, because I think they were very resistant against it.
True. Um, but it being 2023 and all, that was also a long time ago that Ireland separated from the United Kingdom. The majority of Ireland separated
Yeah,
from the United Kingdom. That was like 100 years ago, over 100 years ago. Um, I mean, Tony Blair, the British Prime Minister, has an Irish passport. You know, he's effectively an Irishman, the former Prime Minister of the UK, and he's just one. He's just one guy. I mean, there's a huge Irish influence in Britain, and it's very noticeable these days. And there's also actually as well a big American influence in Britain, and it's equally as noticeable. So it's sort of like, I mean, we have a huge influence over there. It's not even arguable at this point. Um, so it's sort of like that. It's, if the U.S. government were trying to hurt the American people, it wouldn't just be the American people that they would have to deal with. It would be a lot of other people. I mean, even for instance, Russia. If you really examine what someone like Putin talks about, he's frequently talking about how, and has been doing it his entire presidency, which is like 20 years now or something. But
Yeah, take some time off, get reelected, take some time off.
he's been talking and has talked extensively about how his problem is not with American people. The problems that he's had is with the United States government.
Hmm.
See, he he tend like he's talking about how he would tend to. He's been talking about here how he would tend to side with the American people over the United States government. So it's like even someone like that, who is obviously a very controversial figure at the moment, um, wouldn't want to be in a fight with the American people. He might have issues with our government. But I think if you really examine it, we're not alone, And sometimes our government might try to make us feel like we're, rats in a cage and isolated and under their thumbs. But we really aren't. It's like we have the power, and um, we have a lot of support.
I do think that's something that the U.S. population is pretty good about, is not vilifying a whole nation or a whole country because of what their government's doing. Um, they we make it very specific. Like we're not mad at the Russian people for what Vladimir Putin or his office decides to do. Same with China. We're not mad at the Chinese civilian for what their government decides to do. We've always had a pretty good balance with that, at least keeping it cordial with other countries, regardless of if they like us or not.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the Russian people. For instance, I grew up with Russians. There's a lot of Russian people in Boston. There's a bigger number in New York, for instance. There's a lot of Chinese people in Boston. I mean, Boston's Chinatown is enormous. It's a massive part of the city.
Mhm.
Um, and I grew up there, so it's like I made a lot of friends from China growing up. Um, yeah, I don't have a problem with the people at all. Like, they're great people. Most of the ones I've met are great, better people than me. As far as I'm concerned.
So, what do you think is, if you got into office, would be the best way to tackle some of these problems when it comes to putting more power in the hands of the people, bringing back the idea of free will?
Hmm.
Um, what do you think would be the necessary decisions that would have to be made? in order to restore that?
Well, I think anything that resembles the Patriot Act just needs to be overturned. I've been saying this since before it was initiated because I knew about it before it was actually put into effect. I knew what they were doing and paid attention. I'm like, wait, we can't. This is wrong. We shouldn't be doing this. And they went and put it through. What they say, oh, we're not, you know, there's no surveillance going on. There's no recording of your phone calls. There's no recording of your texts or this conversation, for instance, isn't being. It's like, they're still doing it.
I saw a interview with a higher up in the CIA that's retired, and he was explaining in an interview that he goes, it doesn't matter if you take your battery out of your phone, we can still monitor you through that same phone without a battery in it. Like, people couldn't even fathom the conversation that this guy was having because everybody thinks, oh, I'm just going to put a piece of tape over my camera and I'm just going to shut off my phone and nobody can hear me. And it's just like, yeah, that's such an illusion, especially how good technology is nowadays.
I know. I think there needs to be some proof to ordinary people that this stuff is over and it's not coming back. And I think that the government actually needs to earn the trust of the people in this regard.
Yeah.
And I can understand, for instance, why Californians don't vote for Republican presidents because Californians realize that a bad Republican president is potentially the worst thing that can ever happen. But everybody knows that a Democrat isn't gonna do the same kind of stuff. Let's be honest. A bad Republican president is probably worse than a bad Democrat president.
I don't know. It depends on what you would consider a problem. If you consider yourself more of a conservative, I think that's where democratic ideologies are really more harmful. When we start allocating funds to things that I don't think are necessary.
Yeah, but on a domestic, on a basic freedom level, for instance, like Californians are primarily concerned about that, and this is why they don't
have a care in the world. They elect people like Arnold Schwarzenegger to take care of their political problems. And then Gavin Newsom, he's an interesting one.
Yeah, for sure. He reminds you of Hannibal Lecter.
A little bit, yeah. He definitely got that American Psycho public image. Him and Trudeau. Gosh.
Yeah, I don't know.
We were talking about Canada earlier. We got a Canadian patriot likes to watch our channel, and he is not a big fan of Mr. Trudeau.
Yeah. I don't know anything about him, really. This is the thing that kind of makes me a little nervous about him. But I'm not Canadian, so it's not really any of my business, I suppose. But should I choose to ever live in Canada again? I have lived there. It would make me nervous to have someone like that continue to be in office in that country.
It would make me nervous if knowing that these neighbors are the only ones that can help the U.S. citizens defend themselves against the tyrannous government who's in charge over there might be quite important.
Yeah, I suppose so. I lived in Canada when his dad was the Prime Minister, which was Pierre Trudeau, was Justin Trudeau's dad. Allegedly, maybe it was Fidel Castro. I don't really know. Allegedly, Fidel Castro.
Fidel just raised him. He was born of Pierre, and he was
Yeah,
sent off to be reformed by his other
but
counterpart.
Pierre Trudeau is on record as having said that the greatest threat to world security at the time was the United States. Which,
Makes sense.
yeah, I mean, he was very aligned with the Soviet Union at the time. And this was also before Canada even had its own really sort of its own constitution, I think. I think they only really got a real constitution in like 1980 or something up there. Um, yeah, so they're kind of really behind in a lot of things, I think, as far as the overall culture is concerned. Um, they don't really understand the United States, uh, which is unfortunate because we share a massive border.
Yeah.
So they probably should understand a little bit more about their neighbors. I don't know. We're working on it though. I think gradually they will. More and more they will.
Do you see our current political system leading towards ever grabbing more land for the U.S. Or spreading the U.S. territory?
Current administration, I'd be surprised if there aren't major secessions with the current administration.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if Texas is still in the United States by 2024, frankly. But,
California has been saying it for years.
yeah, but a state like Texas, could actually probably secede from the United States if they really wanted to. If we really wanted to, I mean, I'm a Texas resident, so
I have a feeling the U.S. military would let them do it, and then
mm,
as soon as they did, they would walk in and take the land back.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, when it comes to a fight, you really don't want to mess with Texas. Don't, I
It's
hate to
true.
sound cliche, but don't mess with Texas.
Well, it is really true. I think. I mean, besides the recent migration that's been going on to Texas, it's becoming more of I guess, a democratic state from its Republican roots. Um,
mm,
you're getting a lot of interesting ideologies popping up in Texas.
mm,
Um, like Houston, like the way that Houston's changed probably in the last 10 years is so significant. Um, to the state of Texas. I really don't think you could even classify it as Republican anymore. It's kind of purple now, and
mm.
everybody's starting to realize it. But yeah, of course, there's the outskirts that are still kind of the same, but the major cities are very purple now.
Yeah. Um, but that's cities, cities all over the place are like that. I mean, that's what happens. But I mean, I'm out in the sticks in Texas. I'm out in the western part of the state. I'm not in Texas right now, but that's my primary home is West Texas, and it hasn't changed since the Spanish took it over. It's basically the wilderness, and it's just people who know how to get stuff done and don't have to. Like if you were born and raised in a major city, you wouldn't even survive in West Texas. That's how rugged it is. It's just like you just wouldn't know what to do. And I've lived in major cities as well. I grew up around Boston. I've lived in Boston itself. I've lived, just outside of New York City. Um, I've spent well, I spent time in Europe, living in Europe. Um, in Canada. And yeah, I mean, if you were born and raised in just a major city, you wouldn't know what to do in probably most of Texas. It's the wilderness. You have to know how to build your own stuff. You have to know how to get food without going to the supermarket.
I think there's a big problem with major cities that people don't address. And it's just like, all right, when you have these population dumps in the center of whatever state you might want to call it. I mean, I live outside of the Chicagoland area. I understand that Chicago decides the vote for the rest of my state.
Hmm.
Like there is no, I mean, once these major cities start getting to the size that they are, and our votes are based on uh, population, then wherever the concentrated population is going to decide for all of the surrounding areas. So regardless of I don't know how well they're doing outside of the cities and everything like that, people in the cities are making your decisions for you. That's it's a dangerous thought. Like it's a scary thought more than anything. I mean, I know a lot of Illinoisans that won't even vote because they know that if they're not voting Democrat, their vote doesn't really matter in the state of Illinois.
Yeah, and this is where people again are sort of, they get discouraged maybe if they think about that. But it isn't really always that way. It's just what people are thinking. It's just what they're taught to think as well a lot of the time. Just, oh, well, I'm not going to bother, it's not going to make any difference, blah, 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 blah. But, it probably does matter. I mean, I don't really know. I don't know all the facts about how the electoral system works at the moment as it stands, but
Andre
it could
Little
be
says, Andre Little says, "Don't mess with Texas. You mess with the bull, you get the horns."
that is still true in Texas. I will tell
Yep.
you that. In other states, it might be. It might not be like that. It depends on the state. I think. Some states are so overall kind of controlled and corrupted that there's probably not much that can be done if people want to change things, other than we got to figure out some real serious way to get into those places and get people out who shouldn't be there because they're only there through corrupt means. Like, for instance, Massachusetts, where I grew up, that is not a blue state, but it always goes blue in federal elections.
Why is that?
I'm sure that there's major corruption in it. I'm just absolutely sure of it. I don't have.
Where do you? But do you think the people are voting that way, or do you think it's like we were talking about before? The elected officials are making it go that way, or how is it working?
Well, that's a good question. How? I don't. I mean, if we look at the what do you call it? Well, there's the whole thing about the voting machines being tampered with, which I think is probably a valid theory at this point. A few elections ago, that was considered insane to even consider. It's like, oh, how could you even think that the election was rigged by flipping the voting machines in favor of George Bush? How could you even think that? That's absurd. That's lunacy. But I think it's been established at this point that it's probably true.
I mean, even with the George Bush one, they gave you the illusion that they were counting them all by hand and it was going to be done right.
Mm-hmm.
In Florida, we were waiting for that we were waiting for that count for a long time. I remember, and it still came back wrong. Didn't matter if there was machines producing it. It didn't matter if there was a human influence on it. It
Mhm.
just seemed like whatever was decided, it was already decided.
Yeah, I know.
But I just
And
don't know
that's
how I don't know how any incoming president is going to be able to fight against something like that.
it's a really good question. How do you actually do that? Um, well, I don't have any idea, frankly, but it is something definitely that should be given serious consideration to and addressed and rectified, I think, because, I mean, how can you have, for instance, California, which is, the most populated state in the country, um, and it's probably been corrupted that way.
Oh yeah,
So that's a serious issue. I mean, whether it's been decided or not, or whatever, whether we're going to consider the popular vote as a basis for who the electoral college appoints or not, it's still a serious issue, and it should be rectified. I don't know how to do that. I don't. I haven't given any consideration to it. I would have to seriously sit and think about how to do that. Which,
you know what I think would be a good proposal that I've never really talked about, but it's always like irked me. Um,
mm,
Everybody considers between California and New York, they consider those the flyover states.
mm,
Um, Chicago being maybe an exception to that rule, but
mhm,
everybody complains about overpopulation and this and that. I think the best thing to do is show people the financial gain to moving to all the other states that we have in the United States. Right now, we
mm,
have this strange thing where we complain about global warming, and we have everybody living on coastlines. The majority
yeah,
of our population is all on coastlines all across the U.S., and then
yeah,
everybody else that's in the flyover states is not really worried about space. They got all the space in the world. Like they uh,
yeah,
they're not worried about how big their yard is, and they don't have 900 people stacked on top of them in a building. Like I think if we offered and showed people, like, it's so expensive to live in these big cities, like
mm,
for people to realize how much money you could save, how much easier it would be to live, to just live in a place that isn't as expensive. I mean, I always use Chicago as a great example because the majority of people that work in Chicago don't live in Chicago. They know
yeah,
better. They drive into Chicago, work there, make Chicago style wages, and then they go back to their home outside of Chicago and they take that money
yeah,
with them. It's not being reinvested the same way.
yeah. The problem with that, though, is that when California people move to Texas, it's like, get out of my, don't California my Texas. You know what I'm
Yeah, no, it's
saying?
true. But that's why I was addressing these things, is because
Mm,
it could very quickly turn into something like a Chicagoland thing where these major cities are deciding what's going on for the rest of the state. I
mm,
mean, we see it happen in places like California and places like New York. Uh, Florida's kind of on the border of it. I think there's too many major cities, and the population's a little more spread out in Florida because everything's coastal. So,
I
I
think New
mean,
York is
you're not the
probably
only. What's that?
corrupted. I think New York is probably corrupted too, as far as which way the votes go.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
I would agree.
I don't think New York is really that liberal at all, frankly. I mean, I've lived right in the greater New York area, on the very edge of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, which is greater New York City. And I tell you, you can hear banjos there. You know what I mean? Like, just walk down a certain street and you hear banjos. It's not. It's not a. it's not as liberal as people think. It's very old school. Um,
That's the new common phrase that gets spammed in my chat when I'm out kayaking and it's kind of late at night. Everybody's like, "Oh, I hear banjos playing," and then I go, "Do do 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 do." I
yeah,
just, I think everybody's got this weird thing where they think banjo means like unsafe and like podunk and just so rural that they're not connected to society. And I'm like, it's not all like that. Like people that live outside of major cities, like you were saying earlier, have a way better understanding about how to survive than people
mhm,
living in these major cities who couldn't even grow their own food. If they didn't have a supermarket, they wouldn't be able to take care of themselves
yeah,
without something local to take care of them. I mean, it's the
mhm.
rural people are a lot more independent than people would understand.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of a mix of both personally because I've lived in cities, I've lived around cities, and I've lived out in the middle of nowhere, like the most out in the middle of nowhere as you can possibly find. Um, and so you get kind of well rounded that way.
Yeah, it gives you a way better perspective on the world.
Mhm. Yeah, but yeah, I think I would rather not be anywhere near a big city, frankly, anymore. I, this is for work, like for work related stuff. Like if it's some kind of work that I have to be near or in the city to do, then obviously I'm going to be in or near a city. But I would prefer to be out in the middle of nowhere because it's like everything's right there. You don't really. It's actually less work.
When you were saying that, I thought you were going to break into song. I want to go where the people are.
Yeah. I like to go where there's a lot of trees and water, and I can catch a fish, that kind of thing. Maybe hunt a deer, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, that's my whole purpose of going camping and going on my solo kayak trips. Is I just need to get away from the city that I live in. It's not huge compared to a
Mm.
lot of other cities, but just getting away from, I don't know. I think it's a toxic environment mentally.
Oh yeah, drink some.
It-
Well, and literally physical toxic environment too.
oh yeah, yeah.
I
Besides the
love being
smog
able to
and
just
everything else.
drink some clean water out of the ground. It's like, why would you want to be in a city where the water's fluoridated, for instance, and you're drinking like recycled, reconstituted urine, which is quite literally what you're getting in the
Yeah, it's
cities.
just a mixture of what is it? Flushed away birth control and fluoride and whatever else is getting pumped into the system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the things that I don't know. I never thought we'd reach this point, like because I always grew up and people were talking about other countries and they're like, oh, if you go to this country, don't drink the water there. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I've slowly started to feel this about my own country. Like, oh yeah, we probably shouldn't drink the tap water there, or yeah,
Yeah, I would not drink the water in New York. I would not drink the water in Boston. Um, there's probably a bunch of cities in the United States I wouldn't drink the water from. Big cities.
my driver said, add chlorine and ammonia to that mix.
Mhm.
Yeah, they put a lot of things in it, and they tell you that they're using it to clean the water in their processing plants.
Yeah. I suppose they do all that for a reason, though. Put fluoride in the water, and you have a docile population.
Oh yeah, no, I have heard of that mud rabbit, distilled or Osmatic.
I'm in a city right now, and this is what I'm drinking from.
You have to. I mean, and I wonder if um, we're missing a lot of the natural minerals when we're getting even purified water and stuff like that. I think that a lot
Yeah.
of the stuff that's actually good for us in water that replenishes our minerals is getting taken away too.
Mhm. Yep. So, it kind of goes to show that there are issues that we need to address, like domestic issues. That's just the water is one thing, but um, there's plenty of other stuff, and we're ignoring a lot of the stuff. We're not addressing it, and then we're involving ourselves in all this other stuff that we don't really need to do. It's just kind of to distract us from what we could be doing instead. And
Yeah.
you know, that's
No,
part of what some of the stuff I'm proposing is that we kind of just shift our focus a bit more towards ourselves, really, and fix ourselves. Because, and I hate to quote George Bush, but he took it from the Bible. Um, like, how can I? He said something about how can I take the rafter out of my brother's eye when I have a log in my own? That kind of thing. Which I mean, that's just he was just quoting Jesus Christ, but you know, you got to take the thing out of your own eye first, so you can see how you can help other people.
Woody has a funny comment and said, "Tap water turned my frogs gay." I get the reference. Said that a hole was right about the frogs, though. Yes, he might have been right about that. Not everything, but he was right about a few things.
Alex Jones.
Yeah, old AJ.
Mm. I don't think he realizes yet that he's going to end up being president, but
Or
maybe he'll
dead.
find out.
I thought I thought he was supposed to be a future president.
Yeah, I still think he's going to end up being the president in the 2040s at some point, probably 2048. I think it was that I was able to figure that out. 2048. So don't worry, it's just for 4 years.
If that, I I have a love balance, like a love hate balance with Alex Jones.
Hmm.
The later years that I've seen him, I think he has a muzzle on him in the most part, and I think he just says kind of what people want him to say now. So I don't give him as much merit as he used to have when he seemed like more of a whistleblower.
Yeah, they definitely got to him somewhere along the line.
Woody said, "Give him a year, he'll have a heart attack." Yeah,
Hmm.
probably. The way he lives is like he's on like testosterone replacement therapy and pretty heavy drinker.
Hmm.
And I could only imagine his blood pressure is just through the roof.
Yeah.
I don't see him living another 20 years. To be honest, I hope he does. I hope he can stay healthy and alive. But
Well, I think that his biggest issue was that his, you know, his kids. I think his ex-wife tried to manipulate him quite extensively through his kids, and but I think he'll be fine once Bitcoin really starts to actually take off because I know he's got an awful lot of it somewhere.
I'm
So
doing good, Diva. I hope you're doing well.
he should be fine. He's got more than I do. So.
Andre said, "Yeah, it was 2048 that
Mhm.
Alex Jones is supposed to be president." So, Andre, does that mean he's going to beat you for your second term? Is Alex Jones going to walk in and beat Andre Little? Oh, actually, so I don't know. I still want to know how. Andre Little is going to beat Ann Coulter. I don't know. I think Ann Coulter's got some chops on her. She'd be a hard one to debate.
Yeah, she would destroy anybody in a debate. That's why you want her on your side.
That's true.
So, Anne, if you're out there, will you please be my vice president in 2024? I think you'd make a great one, and I think it would be a really good springboard for you to launch from to eventually become president yourself, which I think will also happen. Hit me up, send me a message, macintoshusa.org.
Talk about a nice vice president. Like, that would be amazing seeing you run with Ann Coulter. Have you thought about that? Who you would actually want as your vice president? I mean, besides you just saying Ann Coulter, have you put some thought into that? If you ever were elected?
Yeah, Ann Coulter.
Yeah. Would you like say? So would you need her to be your running mate, or could you get elected prior to announcing her as your running mate? Like, how does that work?
I mean, I've announced that in this same way that Trump announced that Mike Pence will be his vice president. It's just okay. If I become president, Ann Coulter is going to be my vice president.
But they were actively running together, weren't they? Once he got the nominee.
Yeah, I don't think you really heard much from Mike Pence though. He was just kind of there, if I recall correctly. I don't remember hearing anything about him or even a word from him when Trump was campaigning. It was all Trump.
Yeah. He doesn't like to share the spotlight that much.
No, he doesn't. I, on the other hand, if if I actually do somehow magically end up in the White House, which I still don't expect to happen, I still think it's very absurd, frankly. But if I do that, and Ann Coulter chooses to accept to be the vice president, you're probably going to be hearing more from her than me, because I don't really like talking to media. I don't really like wasting time when I could be getting work done. So it would be more just me getting work done, and if the public needs to talk to somebody, they could talk to the press secretary or Ann Coulter.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
It makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of a press secretary, and I also don't think it's the president's job to address the public nonstop.
I don't think so either. I think it was really horrible what Trump did when he was just in front of the press every day, and he should have been working for the people. I think he failed miserably when it came to actually getting work done, because he was more focused on what he could get out of being in the limelight, I think, frankly. I would absolutely be not like that. I would be the complete opposite. In fact, I don't even really like, I'm still, as you can see, I'm still visibly not the most comfortable person with talking in this way, talking like this is live, there's people out there watching this probably, and it's not the most comfortable thing.
There's nobody out there watching. It's just me and you talking. Don't worry. Yeah.
Well,
this is a safe space.
It'll be out there, and it does make me uncomfortable, like knowing that people will watch this. And as you can see, I'm saying a lot.
You made me a little nervous one day when you told me what Michael Phillips had said about my show, and I was like, that is kind of a strange thought to know that, like, something that I'm doing for fun, like this online thing and talking to people and hearing people's stories and their in their life experiences. I have never fathomed it as being something big
Hmm.
or anything like that. And when you told me something like that, I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I'm, I don't know if I want that because I get the same thing. Like when there's a lot of eyes on me, I question my words a little bit more and make sure I'm
Hmm.
trying to present them the best way as possible. But yeah, there's still an underlying fear there.
Yeah, that, that's how I am, and it's just like that. Like when I'm, for instance, playing music, I, you know, especially when I was younger, I had like long hair. Um, I would. I'm a vocalist, which is really weird for someone like me because I'm actually naturally quite an introvert. So, but I would have like my hair down in front of my face, and I'd have my eyes closed a lot, and I could just I would have to pretend I was in a rehearsal room by myself, just practicing when I'm playing a concert in front of people. I learned how to not be so introverted, um, but I'm still working on it. I'm just not really an extroverted person whatsoever.
We were talking about Jim Morrison offline, and I always remember like when he used to first do his shows, he would do them not facing the crowd,
Yeah,
and the band eventually was like, "Come on, turn around, Jim, like
right.
address them, like go out there and talk to them." And eventually, he was able to look at the crowd, and he once he did open up, he ate that alive when it came to like wanting that attention, wanting that the eyes on him, and then he eventually
Yeah,
got real sick of it. That's when he was like, "All right, never mind. I'm going to France. I'm done with all of you guys."
yeah. It does become like if you are in that. I mean, I've never been as in front of as large of an audience as Jim Morrison was on a regular basis, but um, even on the level that I've done that, it's very toxic. It messes with your mind, it messes with your personality, it turns you into someone that you start to not recognize anymore. So, yeah, maybe that's what happened to him. I don't know. It seems like he had a really tragic situation towards the end of his life. But
Yeah, it's weird how much money and ego can change a person,
mhm.
and how gosh how little you would need. I was hearing somebody they gave me an analogy. They were talking about actually I think I heard this from Andrew Tate recently. He was talking about if I was playing video games with like me and you, Michael, and I told somebody, "Hey, I'll give you $10,000 if you beat me," and I'm a really good chess player. You're not so good of a chess player, and the scenario is you get the $10,000 whether you cheat or not. So you have the ability to cheat to obtain the $10,000. Would most people do it? And most people's answer, like if they were getting their butt kicked and they were allowed to cheat, they'd say, "Yeah, I would cheat and I'd get the $10,000." And that's only a small fraction of money compared to what people do on these like political offices, control of a country. Like weird how much money will corrupt people, how much ego will corrupt people, and how little it takes to open that door to the possibility of it.
Yeah, well,
Oh, I think Brett's in the other room. Yeah, Brett. I'm not sure what channel you're on, but we got three channels that have been going today. We're on the Facebook channel and both YouTube channels. Either way, appreciate you being here, man, and cheers. Andre Little said Alexander Macintosh will be president. Alexander Michael Macintosh will be president in 2052 to 2056.
that's what I was able to figure out. Now, as far as my experiences with, I don't know what you want to call it. I mean, for lack of a better term, we're going to call it time travel. I hate to use that term because it's a cheesy terminology. I think it's probably more accurately referred to as quantum displacement, but that's really what it is. What I experienced, I still don't know if we are on that particular timeline, as it were. Um, I'm not able to tell, you know, I simply can't tell. So there's no way to actually verify if what I have said in the past came true on the up to the point that I had been, if it will come true from the point that we are now and up to that point, because I don't know, something could have happened to alter that. I just really don't know. Um, so everything I've said so far could just be me reporting from a particular timeline that isn't this one.
Yeah. No, I mean, me digging into a lot of these cases with people, I thought the same thing when Andrew's upcoming election came and passed, and
Hmm.
I also thought maybe he was looking at a different timeline or something had been altered, where or to me, I thought it was more not timeline because I don't know if we understand the term the way we try to explain it. Like I don't know if like the public idea of what an altering timeline is and then popping into a new dimension,
Mhm.
depending on the technology that these people are using to go visit other places. I could only imagine like what if you popped into dimension that was similar to our own and uh, it has a lot of the same key staples in it, but the course of events is just slightly different. And if you saw future events in that timeline, doesn't mean they necessarily affect the one that you previously went from. And I think dimensions and timelines are kind of interchangeable in that idea, especially when you're talking about like a the bowl of marbles theory about dimensions. Like, oh, it's like a
Hmm.
bowl of marbles, and I think, say your dimension is one marble, and all the ones closely around you would have similar key things. That's a nice cat's eye you got there. But yeah, I think the closer the marbles are to you, the closer they are to your reality, and then the farther you get away, the more different the timelines would be. Like you could have a timeline where Hitler never died, or you could have, you
Hmm.
know, one where the one of the different world wars went a different way.
Hmm.
Hey, R.A. Garcia, thank you so much for being in here. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And, right now we could be on a different timeline, per se, as the one, or to the one that I was able to access and gather that information from. Um, I just don't know. Like, it's too early to tell, frankly, because I only recovered these memories in, I still have the book right here. I only started recovering these memories in this date, December
Oh yeah,
14th.
we've gone over a little bit of it. I uh,
Since,
I know you got quite a bit in there. I know we've only
hmm,
gone over parts of it.
and we're still working on this. This is part of why I'm here. Is to This is a much well. I have really good access. If I where I am, if I just go a short distance outside of the city, there's some really good kind of natural environments that I can kind of relax in and meditate in and start to really kind of recall things. That's very helpful. And as you can see, I've been like just adding to it. Let me show you something that's well. This is 20. Well, yeah. I won't go into this stuff right now, but we are kind of accessing newer things, and have just been doing that. Like I was just doing that earlier today and yesterday, which is really
Zachary Kim would like me to ask you, will you sing Hail to the Chief?
no.
Okay, there you go. That's why I didn't really put it up. I assume you didn't want to just break into song in the middle of what we were talking about. Yeah.
I do like the Radiohead album "Hail to the Thief."
Hail to the Thief.
Yes, that's a great album.
In Mud Rabbit, I kind of agree with the incarnation idea. If energy can't ever be destroyed, I do like the idea that energy could be popped up into another dimension, and you could that could be the idea of reincarnation, is popping into a new timeline on a new dimension or whatever you want to call it, and having your new life there. Because that's what I've always thought was on the other side of a black hole was a white fountain, or what we would describe as like a Big Bang. I think it's on the other side of a black hole would be an ever expanding universe until it depleted and continued the same process. But that's just my convoluted mind trying to understand it.
Yeah. So we were actually though doing some regression stuff
What did you come up with for new stuff that you added?
yesterday. Um, not sure if I should talk about it. I should probably try to figure out a way to actually communicate this first before saying anything, because it's a little convoluted and I haven't fully processed it.
You can give us the rough draft and we can kind of unpack it with you.
Well, I think now what would be the most interesting point? Well, yeah, some of it's so bizarre that I can't even begin to figure out how to express it. I should probably try to go over it a bit more and figure out how to actually explain myself, because I don't even know if there's not even language for some of the ideas that I've been accessing yet. So there's stuff I need to figure out how to, like, what terminology to use so that people actually understand it.
Are they ideas of something that you've done in your past, or that are you something you're supposed to do in the future? Like where does it
Yeah,
fall
stuff
like
in,
in classification?
okay, like particularly earlier today, I was able to figure out somehow. I don't know what the method is. I don't know how to term the method, um, but figuring out somehow that in the future, from us now, um, what will be a particular situation for um, myself, and how it falls into this bigger picture as far as what is being accomplished right now, which is this campaign that I'm doing. Because I mean, I'm not some super wealthy guy or anything. I'm pretty, you know, kind of, maybe middle class ish. Um, so my thinking is like, how am I going to compete with people who have billions of dollars at their disposal to promote a campaign, um, who are being backed by APAC or the NRA or whoever?
Yeah, that
Um,
has financial backing. That I mean, because it's horrible how much financial backing you need to run for president in the
yeah,
United States. I
it's a
mean,
lot of
we've
money.
always been told you can be whatever you want when you grow up. They don't say that as much nowadays, but
Mhm.
it's it's insane how much it takes to try to be the leader of this country.
Mhm. But
What is it to even get on the ballot? Do you
uh,
know?
well, it's a few $1 million just to get on the ballot in every state. Um, but somehow I I've realized that my situation is definitely going to improve over the coming 2 months or so. So it's now so August and September, which is I'm kind of expecting something major to happen in this brief time period that will maybe not facilitate me being able to qualify to be in the Milwaukee debates in August, but certainly to uh, continue my campaign in a way that won't matter if I'm in those debates or not, really, and will actually grow my campaign to a point where it won't matter that I wasn't even in them, which is kind of good in my opinion because I don't really want to be in debates with like I think the Republican debates are kind of fruitless. Frankly, it just seems like I don't know, the best that you can get out of them is just people trashing each other. And if Donald Trump is going to be in them, I definitely don't want to be in them because it's just like his debating style, quote debating style. It's just like he just comes out slinging mud at everybody. You know
Are you scared he's going to make fun of your hands?
what's that?
I said, are you scared he's going to make fun of your hands?
My hands.
I just know that's his style. He's got
Yeah,
little hands.
yeah.
I don't know if you
Well,
know this. He's got small hands. I don't know what
yeah,
that means. I'm not implying anything.
yeah. It means I actually did work that he never did, and that kind of stuff. Anyway, yeah. See, the thing is like I would if I really wanted to, I could actually destroy somebody like that in a debate in the style that that person debates in. But I just don't want to do that. You know, I don't think it's very constructive or beneficial to the cause of republicanism in the United States of America. I take the concept of republicanism in the United States to be very, very serious. Like, it's not a laughing matter. It's not a joking matter. It's um, it's not to be denigrated. You know, I think it's meant to be taken very seriously, and to bring a Republican debate down to that level, it's like it's just denigrating to the whole process. And if Donald Trump is anywhere near that debate, it's like the famous quote that is attributed to Mark Twain. Um, it's like, don't debate with idiots because they will just drag you down to their level and beat you with experience.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I don't want to be brought down to that level, and I don't want to participate in something that's just that lowbrow. You know, and it would be especially lowbrow if Donald Trump are part of it
Um,
because
when you were first saying that, I agree 100% because I've always thought of the debates now being geared more towards like kind of like whose line is it anyway? That old show
yeah,
that they used to have on TV where everything's made up and the points don't matter. That's what the debates are now. And then if you look at what the Democrats are doing in the current debates, it's basically they're not letting any Democrat debate in the upcoming elections. I think um, that is such a travesty to do to anybody on any voting side. They're basically
mhm,
saying, all right, we've already picked our candidate. It's Joe Biden. No one's able to run against him, and there will be no Democratic debates.
mhm,
And um, I think Donald Trump is the one who made a stand up move, almost like a slap in the face. He's like, well, if you guys aren't going to show up to the debates, why would I show up to the debates? He goes, I don't even
mhm,
need to. Like, he's
mhm.
going to get votes regardless. Does he even need to show up to debates if the sitting president doesn't want to show up and debate people that are trying to, battle for his position? Because there's easily people on the Democratic side that don't think Joe Biden would be good for a second term. Like, I don't think it's hard to dig to find people on both sides that would not like Joe Biden to be in office anymore.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna have. I mean, I hope to God that it's just two completely different people than Biden and Trump
Yeah,
that are
I mean,
nominated.
after the cocaine in the White House, I think there needs to be a change of policies. I mean, I don't know how many years it's been since there was cocaine in the White House, but
Mhm.
seems to be popping back up. I'm gonna catch up the chat because I just saw them talking about that.
I
Oh,
don't know which is
Michael,
worse, cocaine or like a hamburger buffet. Both are equally as embarrassing to me as the
right?
others. So
Yeah, I
it's
don't
like
want to see a tower of Diet Coke cans either. So
I don't,
Trump's got his own issues.
we don't need a golden toilet in the White House either. The ceramic one's just fine. It works just fine.
I could
I
totally
don't,
see him
and
pooping and
I don't,
saying, "King of
I
the
don't
castle, king of the castle."
The- and I don't care if a black person used it before me or something. You know what I mean? It's not like. Did you hear that? Where the White
Trump
House
said that.
staff actually like had to have the toilet removed because Obama had used it beforehand.
I mean,
It's like, I
maybe
mean,
it's just a pun on words because he was a shit president. I don't know.
I think it was quite literal. I think they didn't want it, someone in his probably family didn't want to use the a toilet in the White House because the Obamas had used it and they're racist. It's that out to lunch. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. That's a stretch. I haven't heard that one. Um, I know all incoming presidents redecorate stuff. And I
Yeah.
mean, you look at the Clintons; they stole all the silverware, didn't they? Like, like
I don't
everybody
know.
does some weird shit when they're when they're in their presidency.
Mm.
I uh, I don't
Well,
know.
I
I
won't be
can't.
replacing the toilet. I don't even care if Joe Biden used it. So whatever. You know what I mean? It's a working toilet. Whatever.
Well, I know you consider yourself middle class. Just don't leave with all the silverware, okay?
No,
People pay for that shit.
that's yeah. That's I'm not like that. You know. I just want a purple curtain in the Oval Office. That's it. That's
Purple
the only.
curtain.
Just purple
Nice.
curtains.
All right.
That's the only thing I would like to have if possible. Not insist upon even, but
I'm gonna try to catch up the chat real quick. Michael, there's always been a donation option on this channel. I never ask for donations or push it, but it's always in the description on any of my videos. Um, and I have an ongoing rule. So whatever guest is on with me, and this has been since I started my show, any guest that's on with me and we make donations that the person directs towards the guest, I'll send the guest 100% of the donations. Any donations that come in whenever I'm doing a one-on-one with my guests, all of the donations get sent. So if you guys actually want to get it sent right to Michael, I could do that for him. If you guys actually want to make donations, I'm not asking for them, but if you're talking about that you would donate, but you don't know how to because there's not a button on YouTube. YouTube takes 30% of the donations from their platform. So I get 70 cents to the dollar if it is donated through YouTube. Let's see. And then he said, I would give you a hint about the cocaine. It rhymes with Hunter Biden. Yeah, probably. There's a pretty good chance he might have left it there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, whatever, man.
And then Woody said, I'll debate. He said, I just would call, by just calling Latin logical fallacy in their arguments. Yeah, that would do it. Well, because most people are good at debating. They're not actually good at speaking what they want to present it to the public about what they're going to do for policy. Like, everybody talks about how they don't want politics in their personal life. And now the only thing is in politics is arguing about people's personal lives. There's no political discussions in politics anymore. It's so weird to me. Like, I don't know. I don't get it.
It's just turned into WWF, I mean, literally like watching Trump campaigning before he became president at all. It was just like watching Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan. That's really what it was,
It's a show. Yeah.
Macho Man Randy Savage,
Oh, yeah.
That's basically what it was. And it's like, what are your policies? What are your proposals? What are your ideas? I don't care about the size of your hands or whatever, And how do you propose getting this stuff done? And I just didn't buy any of it when it came to Trump. I wasn't convinced. And I mean, I'm generally not critical of Democrats anyway, because it's like Californians. I mean, I've spent enough time in California to be affected by the Californian attitude towards Republicans and Democrats, which is like, well, we'll criticize the Republican candidates because we know that a bad Republican candidate is potentially worse than a Democrat candidate. I don't generally get too critical of Democrat candidates because I know they're not really ever going to accomplish anything.
Yeah. Well, I do think and I was talking about this with somebody the other day. I said, what's worse, a president that during their presidency, they get a lot done. They have a low unemployment rate. They make money for the country, but they can't unite anybody in the country. Or a president that doesn't do a lot when it comes to policy, but everybody's united under them and trusts them and feels safe and doesn't ever complain about the system. What's actually more beneficial?
Yeah. I suppose that would be, I think.
Would it be better to unite the people or policies that were provably better for the country?
I mean, I guess you could have both, but it would have to be.
Seems like we've never gotten both, though.
A very exceptional candidate that could do both,
Yeah, I hope we could find something like that. That's what we need, something like that. Because if you look at our last president, I would say he was super divisive, but he was actually making the country money. We weren't losing money on leaps and bounds. And then COVID happened, and I think we had a low unemployment rate, lowest black unemployment rate. There was a lot of things in taxing exports. Like he financially made good decisions for the country. We weren't at a war during his administration, but the country
we were told
divided and hated him.
Yeah. Well, we are actually told that about Trump, but if you look at the figures, the national deficit it was worse because of Trump than it was because of Obama, which was pretty bad. So Trump actually spent more money than Obama. So yeah, I'm very critical of Donald Trump. I mean, I think he hasn't done or hadn't done nearly anything that he said he was going to do. He talked a lot. I think he got a lot of his campaign ideas from elsewhere. For instance, looking at my web pages. For some reason, there's something very eerily similar to stuff that I was putting out there in, you're talking 20 years ago, and his campaign ideas. In fact, I don't know if I told you this before, but there was, when the Iraq War had started, I wrote this proposal on a very popular social media profile that I had. It had millions and millions of friends. It was that site MySpace, if you remember it. I had a page on there that was very popular. Yeah, I was one of the first people on that site. I was one of the first musical artists. I was the number one musical artist in the whole world on that site, by the way. And so I had a very popular profile, and I used to write blogs on it and kind of like putting ideas out. And this is when I was living right near New York, by the way, where Donald Trump is from. And let's see, I remember writing this one blog about being critical of the xenophobic direction that the country had gone in after 9/11 and after when the Iraq War had started. And I started jokingly proposing that we build a wall on the Mexican border, and it would be called the Great Wall of Mexico, and it would keep all the Mexicans out, and it would be amazing and great. And I was making fun, of xenophobia. And what did he do?
I mean, every besides the wall specifically, every president for the last, I don't know, 20 years has wanted to build a stronger infrastructure on the southern border.
Mm-hmm.
But Obama wanted to put up a fence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just don't know. I don't know if any of that's effective when we got cartels running tunnel systems and shit underneath it. We got drones flying over. Like, what we need more drones flying over with what's it called? Heat-seeking technology, where you can actually see when bodies are being transported over the border. Like, that's what you need to actually be able to recognize. And we probably have technology to cover that up too. Like, these cartels are leaps and bounds. I don't think it's going to be a wall or a fence or a big moat. Like, I don't think these things are going to solve the problem. I think we need to update how we're thinking about it.
Yeah. And, I mean, I was making fun of that. When I wrote that on my MySpace page, which had like millions of followers on it. And lo and behold, an actual presidential candidate came along and made that a huge talking point of his platform and was serious. And I thought it was a joke at first. I'm like, is this guy for real? Is he making fun or something? Is this, yeah. But so I was appalled by that, frankly. I don't think that that's the solution at all. To any border issue.
No, I think we need to fix our system of bringing people in legally, because it seems to be too long of a process. I have a buddy who comes on here every once in a while who's trying to get U.S. citizenship. He's in the UK, and he's been coming over on, like, I've spoke about it before, and I don't really understand the system. He's come over on like work visas and stuff like that, and he's just becoming a U.S. citizen after an over 2 year process of like filing and registering to do this. Like he's got no criminal background, no like he just seems like an outstanding citizen. People in the chat might know him, the great Harry Barnett. He's working on becoming a U.S. citizen, and he's kind of on the final steps of it now. But just hearing how hard that process is for someone that's got a clean record and hasn't really done anything wrong, I could see him taking longer with a case that had more stipulations to it. Like if you have quite a history of criminal activity, I could see you getting it in the waiting list a little bit longer. But I don't know. It just seems our process is just so slow for bringing people into the country, and especially if they're leaving for a valid reason, like where they're coming from. Like if there's it's hard to be a refugee, to be honest. Like I don't think we should just open up the borders and just take everybody in without checking it out. But there has to be a process where it could actually be done balanced. Because no, I don't think having anybody with lasers or anything like that on the border, like whatever stupid technology they come up with to try to guard the borders, I don't think it's going to be successful. It's just we need to come in with a new process where people will actually be willing to go through the process.
Yeah. Well, some countries, people can just come in anyway from, like if you're Canadian, you can just come into the United States. You don't really have to. I mean, there's formality involved, but you can just live in the United States and work in the United States, and you have the right to do that as a Canadian, for instance. Same with
a lot of people that travel back and forth all the time.
Yeah, the same with Britain. Since the Treaty of Paris, there's been an agreement with the British since after the American Revolution that British citizens can live and be, and I assume work legally in the United States. They don't really need to become U.S. citizens to do that, or even have any kind of visa. I don't think they even have any kind of visa requirements. It's just automatic.
We take care of the trolls over here, guys. No worries.
Yeah.
There's some people in my chat wondering about trolls in the chat, but for some reason, Nightbot takes care of them on one of my channels, and I take care of it on this channel. Mud Rabbit's got her hand on the trigger most of the time. She's ready to go as well, so no worries about that. This is like one of the few places where no one's just gonna come on and just make fun of somebody. I think it's a strange thing to see on YouTube. But everybody's openly welcome to always make fun of me. That's another ongoing thing I have. Anybody that wants to make fun of me, I'm fine with that. If you have to troll, if it's the only thing that makes you hang out, like if you can't be here without making fun of somebody, you can make fun of me. I'm happy with that.
I don't mind being made fun of either.
Just a waste of energy.
Yeah, if you guys want to do that, that's fine with me. I don't care. It doesn't hurt my feelings, Won't hurt my feelings. I might cry later, though.
I'm so worried about this guy that's got a fake account on the internet. He's picking on me. Rabbit says, Jacob, your mama dresses you funny. Touche, Mud Rabbit. Touche.
You should see my socks. They're really loose.
Your what?
My socks are always loose.
Oh. Do you not like wearing socks?
No, I don't really, actually. But
yeah, I
would wear them sometimes.
I have wood floors, and I took off my shoes and my socks before I started doing this interview. I'm weird about having socks on when I'm in my house. I don't know. I'm not gonna, Michael. If you want to message me about that, um, so I can help him with that stuff, but I can't stop people from doing stuff to other people's channels. I can't. I can only control what I have my hands around. You know. I wish I could help people, but sometimes people ask for him to come in. Some say, hey, bring on the hate. I want to talk to people about it. Like everybody's different about their approach.
What I do, what I don't like is though that when I actually had the for some reason had the idea to actually start talking to people publicly about uh, memories that I had recalled. Like I went on the air with, well, I was initially on Apex TV, and then I was on air with um, Aquarian Radio and the Mars Revealer show there.
Yeah,
What,
Mars is that's Gary's show. Gary this
mhm.
year. Yeah.
What really bothered me then was when, for some reason, one of the other people that I had remembered meeting in when I started doing these recall sessions, that very same person spent hours and hours trash talking me on air with other people. It's like, what? That kind of bothered me. Why would that be a thing? Like, why would that happen? I still haven't figured it out, other than for maybe, I don't know. I really don't know. Like, is there danger somewhere that I'm unaware of, because I haven't been experiencing any danger um, from coming out and talking about this stuff. There haven't been any threats to me for coming out and talking about this stuff. So it kind of leads me to think that it might just be something, and people might do that kind of thing to kind of bolster their own self-image or something. I have really no idea, or public image.
Well, I think it's very. I think it's interesting you bring that up because I've thought about that a lot recently with some of the things that like Corey Goods come out and said, and
Mm-hmm.
people like Andrew Bashiago, people like Brady Kramer's not so bad about it. There's people that I've seen that go out of their way to diminish others' stories in what
Yeah.
we call a truth teller scenario. Like if
Mm-hmm.
this person is just telling their truth, I don't understand why it's any different from you telling your story or them
Mm-hmm.
telling their story. Like there's no reason if these people are just trying to release information that they think they know, what's wrong with doing that? Like I don't see why you'd want to stifle anybody else's ability to do the same thing that you're doing. Like
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
it just seems very disingenuous for the message that like if you're a whistleblower, you should want a bunch of other whistleblowers around you. Let the people that are interested in the content navigate how to get through it and who's telling the truth or who's not or anything like that. I think
Mm-hmm.
the best way to address most things that are corrupt is to put some light on it and let everybody see it and let it happen organically. And then bad ideas seem to go to the wayside and good ones seem to be propelled forward. Or you never know. There could have been connections made a long time ago, but I think people that were disingenuous put up walls on all sides and didn't allow anybody to also have any influence on their story. Like if
Mm-hmm.
they didn't remember you, it couldn't have happened. And Corey Good just recently did this. He started suing other people in the community about using phrases that were around before he used them. And he was trying to basically copyright phrases in the whistleblower community and in the SSP community. And I was like, this is just very strange to see. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so you're telling me people that have books out, like after you no longer can use these words? Like, I just don't get it. Like, it's so strange.
Yeah, I don't understand why people would do that. Doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's like if you're actually just trying to get the truth out there, why would you be critical of or opposed to what somebody else is trying to do, even if that person might be completely full of crap? You know, I mean, it could be that kind of situation, but like, why would you do that if you like? Why would you disparage that? Why would you put so much effort into disparaging that person, even if they're completely, even if it's, even if they are completely full of it? Just be like, hey, just let them. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me, other than if there's some sort of drive, like people have some sort of, it just reveals some sort of personal drive for selfish gain or other. I don't really know, but it's weird.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I've never been able to figure it out. I just think it's one, and most of the straw man arguments that they present, like from the public looking into the topic, like
Mm,
people outside of the SSP or secret space program or super
mm,
soldier programs looking into it, just like as a viewer, it
mm.
sounds like one person that would be considered crazy in the public eye calling another person crazy
Yeah,
because apparently their story is more crazy than theirs, or
yeah,
it's just such a weird argument too. Like it's like,
yeah,
oh, you're saying some outrageous things, he's saying some outrageous things. What makes either one of you right, and why should we believe your argument? Like it just I don't know. It seems like such a stretch and a
yeah,
disingenuous one for the whole movement in general.
yeah. It does seem strange. Like if you're just trying to get the truth out, you know. I mean, I've met and talked to people since I started uncovering this stuff who, you know, I'm not going to name any names or criticize anybody, period. But I know that there are people who are full of crap because it just becomes obvious. Um, but I wouldn't spend hours and hours on media disparaging those people or trash talking them. It just doesn't make any sense.
But you can disagree with somebody logically and not call them crazy. Like if you have a problem with their ideas, you would explain why you had a problem with their ideas rather than just going, "Oh, this person's crazy." Like
Yeah.
especially in this kind of a field, there's no way you can just throw around the word crazy. Or you
Mm,
know what I mean? Or they have or this person made outrageous claims. Okay, we're in a field where everybody's making outrageous claims.
mm,
How is somebody's more outrageous than you, and that one's supposed to be not thought of, but yours is like it seems like you have a more logical approach. Like if you disagree with somebody, regardless of saying their name or anything like that, it seems like some things you just find unbelievable, but not because of I don't know, not because of one person's story is crazier than the other. I don't know. I think it's the weird arguments that people make when they're in these situations. Yours seems a little bit more genuine.
yeah. Okay.
You're not wrong about that, Mud Rabbit. I noticed it a while ago, and it's the same thing that I noticed with like we were talking about Alex Jones. I think people get corrupted in the process of a lot of these things. Whether we're talking about incoming presidents, whether we're talking about radio show hosts, or we're talking about people talking in the SSP community. I think all of it is I don't know. It's. I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Money and ego can get no. It can really change a person.
Yeah. I
I'm
don't
kind
know.
of, I'm kind of curious what you're going to come up with when you dig into this a little bit more about what event might happen prior to this upcoming election that might, change the course of things significantly.
I don't know. I just don't think we're gonna get the same candidates anymore. There seems to be a lot of people hoping that there will either be A, Biden gets reelected, or B, Trump gets reelected.
Yeah.
And I don't think that any of those people really have it right, and they're not considering that, there's other people out there, and things have moved forward already since Trump was elected in 2016 and since Biden was elected. And so it's like we're going to need people who can keep up with what's going on now and be on top of things now. And it will be in the future. And I just don't think that either of those candidates are actually going to be even nominated at this point. It just seems really unlikely. But you never know, I suppose. I don't know. I don't know what this timeline is. This is the thing. We could be on a different pattern of, we could be witnessing a different pattern of events than the ones that I was able to figure out. So once again, I just don't know. And I suppose that's part of it as well. It's like I'm not really supposed to know.
I don't think any of that. I mean, it's like they say in the Bible when they talk about predicting the end of times. I feel like anybody that thinks they know when the whole world's going to end is usually wrong. Like I don't know how many times I've heard that the world was going to end, and it's kind of I don't know. It's kind of very egotistical to say that something way larger than you that you can predict exactly when it's going to stop or when
Yeah.
it's going to be the big change.
Yeah. Well, Matthew 24 says, no man knows the day or the hour. So
Yeah,
I've read it.
it makes sense.
Not only the, yeah, it says basically only God knows, only the Father knows. So
Well,
none of us know.
no, and I don't think we're going to know until
It will happen though.
Oh yeah, it definitely will. That's the cycle of things. We know it'll happen. I just think it's that, and I don't even know that it would destroy all life on this planet. I think life could still be on this planet. I think it's very possible another species could have their reign, and humans could destroy themselves and give the planet some time to heal back up before the sun explodes.
Well, yeah, I think my understanding of the Bible is that when it says the end of the world, it just really means this sort of the way that we've done things. It's not really like the Earth is going to blow up or anything anything like that. I think it just means that like the system is going to end.
Yeah,
Like because it is the world that we live in is basically like we live in the system. We're part of the system, even though we may not want to be, or we try to stay outside of it. We're all inevitably part of this system, and so that's our world. Like we can't really fathom being outside of the system fully because we've always been in it.
I, uh, I kind of think of existence as, at least on this planet, is more of a cycle, because I do believe there is a thing of significant continental drift that happens on our planet, and I also do think the theory of or the hypothesis, whatever you want to call it, of the poles changing at certain points. I think that's all possible, and I think if we could imagine something so big where continents are moving around just what would happen to the structures and the past civilizations on them, how they would be buried and
Hmm.
are defined, and that's only if they were materials that would even make it over that many hundreds of thousands of years. Like I really do think humans are a lot older than we're giving credit, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like this cycle happens a lot. Like I don't even think we're
Hmm.
the most advanced thing to ever be on this planet.
Probably not. No. I mean,
I think it's
and yet,
yeah.
yeah,
I
it
think it's
does seem like that we're definitely much older than people think. I mean, a year. What was a year 10,000 years ago? It could have been 100 years. We don't like the time length of a year has changed over
oh yeah,
time.
oh yeah,
So,
definitely have. Well,
so for
and
instance, when like,
life expectancies. I love reading about the life expectancies of people in the Bible that
hmm,
were living these amazingly long lives compared to what we have now.
hmm,
Like hundreds
yeah,
of
okay,
years people were living. I was like, is it because their days were shorter? Like,
hmm,
were they actually living longer? Um, I often like all the old references of giants. Some we get from the Bible, some we get from Greek mythology. I do think there was a larger race of beings on this planet at one point, and I don't know. I think there's a lot about our planet we don't know, and I think we're naive to think we have it all figured out. Whether it's the end of the world, whether it was, we don't even understand the history of the world, much less how it's going to end.
yeah. Well, it does say we won't be flooded again in the Bible.
It does say that.
Yeah, it does say that. If I recall correctly.
It's interesting. I didn't know it said that.
Yeah,
I just
it
figured
says,
it'd be in a whole different region, and what would be considered, you know, swampland today is going to be a desert in the future. Like it just seems to where our flood would take place. I don't know if we'd have another global flood, which I
hmm,
could probably agree with. But if the ice caps eventually melt, which I know they will, I think our planet in a resting state um, doesn't have ice caps on either end. Like I think we're still coming out of an ice age,
hmm.
but I could only
Yeah,
I could only imagine that we'd have a lot less land if all that ice melted. But I guess it wouldn't be a global flood where everything's submerged. But I don't even think in the Bible everything was submerged. Like when they even talk about the global flood on that point, they were talking about people surviving that made it to the tops of mountains, and it wasn't a global flood, as in there was nowhere to possibly go.
yeah, probably. Hmm. But then I don't know. I wasn't around then, so
Right. We're just speculating about history and historical documents. I don't think it's anything we'd actually understand.
yeah,
It's just fun to speculate on. But man, yeah,
yeah,
we've been on for 2 hours and 40 minutes. Do you want to wrap her up?
sure. I mean, I don't even know what happened in Germany in the 1940s. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't around then, so
Yeah, we only have the accounts of what's still out there that
so
wasn't
I
destroyed.
can't. I can neither confirm nor deny anything. You know what I'm saying?
If you're going down the road that I think you're going down, let's not close the show with that.
I resent those kinds of accusations because I wasn't there, so I can neither confirm nor deny anything. Right? Right. This is why we have robust legislation about things such as this, which we should strive and endeavor to keep intact. The United States is one of the few countries in the world where it isn't a crime to deny the Holocaust.
Yeah, you have freedom of speech, and as long as you're
Yeah.
not inciting violence, I think it's a right that should be protected.
Hmm.
I don't
But
think
it's
I don't think platforms have that same. freedom of speech ability, though.
It's illegal around the world to do that.
It's against the rules on most platforms as well,
Hmm.
and they will silence you in any way they can.
Yeah, I just think that we should keep our laws in that regard. We should look out for that, frankly, because that might be coming our way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
I'm not
agree.
saying I have one opinion on that or another because I don't.
Yeah, you're just
I
saying you don't
wasn't
know
there.
enough about it because you don't know exactly what happened. That's why I
Yeah,
always thought the idea of using something like a chronovisor or some of the technology that we seem to have to go back and look at historical events the way that they happened, I think that could replace museums, and I think it would be a great learning tool where the public could actually use these technologies, but they wouldn't be going and messing up timelines and stuff. They could just view things how they occurred. I think it would be such an accurate representation of history.
yeah. I think when you start policing what people can say or believe about certain things, then you're in a really difficult situation, and that should never happen in the United States because it's starting to get worse elsewhere when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely spreads.
Hmm. So something to look out for, I think.
Well, I'm going to share your what is it, MacintoshUSA.org again, and
Yeah, yeah. We set up a little. When you were speaking of donations earlier, there as well. You can send a donation via Bitcoin through that website.
okay,
So if people want to do that, feel free. It will count towards the required donations for me to be able to participate in upcoming debates. You have to have a certain number of donations if you want to participate in debates. And you also have to be polling at a certain number, which I think I need to work on that. But donations, all good. But
yeah.
keep them coming. I appreciate it. And they'll go towards the furtherance of the platform that I'm putting out there. So,
So yeah, you guys can find that at MacintoshUSA.org.
mhm.
Macintosh USA, no
Yes.
space in the middle.org.
And if you're really bored, feel free to visit my music site for my band, which is youngastronautclub.com, and stream music on there because that helps me get paid also, and that will go towards the work of putting MacintoshUSA.org out even further. So it's all being used to further this platform. So
All right.
that's
Well,
really
thank you,
it.
Michael. I appreciate you taking the time. I know we're in like way different time zones, so I appreciate you being
Yeah,
awake.
I'm over in Europe.
You gotta repeat your phrase that you told me about why you only get two
Which
hours of sleep. I like
oh
that
yeah,
phrase.
well because there's a Democrat in the White House, and you know, I'd at least like to not be shot in my sleep. You know what I'm saying? Or if they're gonna shoot me, I'd rather be awake for that to happen. So
So you're a happy person, and you would never kill yourself, right?
no, absolutely not. Never.
Okay, good.
That's not even no, never.
We just want to
I
make
wouldn't
that
be around.
on recording,
Yep.
so in
I,
case there's any future reference to worry about.
I'm very careful too. I don't get in accidents. I'm not accident prone. You know, mysterious things don't generally happen to me. It's usually, if anything happens to me, it's something weird's up. So keep that in mind, people. I want to be around till I'm like 130.
And also, hello, Michael, or Mike Walker, for stopping in the chat. I appreciate it, man. We're getting ready to wrap up here, but I appreciate
Okay.
making it in. But yeah, thank you, Michael. I appreciate
Okay.
the time, man. I'll talk
Thanks
to you
for
again
having me.
soon.
Talk to you soon. Take care.
Yep, anytime. All right, guys, I'm going to actually be doing an open panel here in a minute. So if anybody would like to join, feel free to. I'm going to be doing that on Twitter and Twitch and my newer YouTube channel. So I was planning on scheduling that next. So feel free to tune in. Talk to everybody later. Sorry if I didn't catch anybody's comments in the chat. There's a lot of comments coming in tonight. So thank you guys so much. And yeah, talk to you soon.